Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
Magnesium is a very important mineral to us humans. It does wonderful, great things for our health. Literally, we cannot function without the mineral magnesium. It's one of the minerals with a higher content in the human body, but it's involved with hundreds of biochemical reactions that really dictate your health. It's just amazing what magnesium can do. For instance, it's hard to release melatonin when you're going to sleep at night if you lack the mineral magnesium. So it can affect sleep, and because of that, it can also affect bone building and bone repair, immune system function, and many other activities that come out of the release of melatonin. Magnesium is needed for daytime energy. When you eat food and you inhale oxygen, you're trying to make a compound called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. There's 3 phosphorus groups in there. It releases one of them. That's your energy. That's your chemical energy. Most of the energy in the human body comes from the release of a phosphate group from ATP. It becomes ADP. 90% of that energy is connected with magnesium. Most of the ATP in your body, that gives you all the energy for seeing, thinking, breathing, walking, everything, is attached to magnesium. So you need magnesium to sleep at night. You need magnesium for the immune system. You need magnesium for bone health. You need magnesium for energy in the daytime. So, and it does a lot more than that. Magnesium is involved with balancing your blood sugar. For instance, the pancreas cannot effectively release insulin, involved with controlling your blood sugar, if you lack magnesium. So it's very important for diabetics. And unfortunately, diabetics lose magnesium in their urine. But there's a number of new discoveries on magnesium that we'll go into over the course of this episode. So welcome to my episode, New Findings on the Mineral Magnesium. My name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a nutritional pharmacist. I'm also the senior scientific officer over here at Invite Health. And I want to thank you for tuning into today's Invite Health podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or visit invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe and please leave us a review. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. So let's get going. All the information, by the way, on this episode is linked at the episode description. So some new findings on magnesium is it helps lower your risk of colon cancer. I'm not surprised. They found that magnesium may help prevent pancreatic cancer too. It's needed by female athletes. I want to go into that. I want to spend time on that. And you need it to activate your vitamin D. So we're going to go into all of this over the course of this episode. So a report just came out, nutritional deficiencies that jeopardize the health of female athletes. It's from a bunch of academic research institutions over in Spain. It's in the Latin American Archives of Nutrition. That's from the University of Catalonia, the University of Castile, the University of Murcia, and the University of Granada. They all work together. Very interesting. A lot of interesting research comes out of Spain. So they looked at a meta-analysis of a whole bunch of human clinical trials on female athletes that came out between the years 2012 and 2020. And they found that it's very common among elite female athletes to have specific problems. Energy, lacking some micronutrients. And they wind up with a combination of situations. It's called the female athlete triad syndrome. They wind up with the female athlete triad syndrome. They have low energy. They develop bone loss, even osteoporosis. They're susceptible to it. And they miss their periods, which is called amenorrhea. So Here's what they said. This is one of the researchers, Miguel Mariscal Arcas. He's the lead author of the study. Until now, there has been very little research into the specific needs of women who practice sports. For example, the greater need for iron is associated with menstruation, and calcium and vitamin D are essential to prevent the onset of osteoporosis, a disease to which women are more susceptible to. So what they're finding is female athletes need higher levels of particular nutrients than the general public. So iron is one of the issues. They have to consume more iron, eating more iron-rich foods, or take a gentle iron. That's important. A gentle iron would be iron bisglycinate. It's really well absorbed. It doesn't make you nauseous. It doesn't cause constipation. It's a great way to get your iron. They need to monitor their vitamin D levels. They need to get more calcium. Why would you need more calcium? When you're an athlete, there's a lot of sweating. And when you sweat, you lose electrolytes through your pores in the sweat, electrolytes and minerals. So there's always has to be a balance between the electrolytes in your blood and the amount of fluid in your blood. And if you lack electrolytes, you start to swell. There's too much fluid, not enough electrolytes. So to prevent that from happening, the body takes the electrolytes out of your bones, which is basically calcium. So doing a lot of sweaty exercise, if you're not taking in enough calcium, can lead to osteoporosis or even osteopenia. That's a lower level of bone loss. So osteopenia, there's some bone thinning. Osteoporosis, there's severe bone thinning, which really increases your risk of a fracture. So like I tell elite athletes or athletes who do a lot of sweaty exercise, take a scoop of our bone powder about a half an hour before you perform physically. And then you'll be flush with these electrolytes. You're less likely to borrow electrolytes from your bones. It'll help preserve your bones. So it seems female athletes have to focus on getting more calcium. They need to check their blood level of vitamin D, but that's not even enough. I'll go into that in a minute, because you need magnesium to activate the vitamin D, and we'll go into that in the next study. Now, they need to get the iron, the calcium, and they have to check their blood level for vitamin D. But they said there's other supplements that are a problem also, other nutrients that are a problem. Vitamin B12. Now, vitamin B12 is really important. You need vitamin B12 to make your red blood cells, and of course your red blood cells supply oxygen. So you're not going to have a lot of energy if you lack B12. You can develop something called megaloblastic anemia, where your blood cells get bigger and bigger. And also, B12 is needed for brain energy and brain function. It interacts with fish oils and vitamin D for brain function. So you need B12. But magnesium and folate. Now, that's really important. Female athletes need more folate. Folate is named after foliage. It's ubiquitous in plants. It's a form of B vitamin. Typically in a multivitamin, they put a synthetic form called folic acid. That works for a lot of people, but not everybody, because not everybody can change that into methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is the active form. And without folate, once again, your red blood cells get bigger in size. You can develop megaloblastic anemia, just like if you lack B12. Folate is needed to protect the brain from a chemical called homocysteine that could cause brain degeneration and loss of memory cells. Folate is needed to lower homocysteine in the blood. Otherwise, the homocysteine can narrow your bones a little bit and increase the risk of a hip fracture, but also increase the risk of a heart attack. But folate is also important for replacing tissue. So when you're growing muscle, you need folate to build tissue. And folate's also important for preventing the first two steps in the cancer process, which is initiation and promotion. So you have to get more folate, more B12, more iron, more protein. You need that to maintain your muscle mass, but protein is also converted into collagen, which makes bone and connective tissue like ligaments and tendons. I would add chromium to this list. I don't know why chromium wasn't part of this. Normally, most people could do fine with 200 micrograms of chromium every day, but athletes lose chromium in their urine. They generally need about 400 micrograms of chromium every day. But magnesium. So here's where I'm going with this. Of these nutrients, magnesium appears to be the most cause for concern, as the nutrient most often prevents deficits. That's true. About 50% of Americans don't get sufficient magnesium in their food. What happens if you don't have magnesium for an athlete? Well, first of all, you need magnesium for physical energy. You need magnesium for mental energy. You need magnesium to sleep at night so you can rest and rebuild your bones and your muscles, etc. You need magnesium to activate vitamin D. So magnesium has two direct effects on your bone. Vitamin D is needed to absorb calcium from your digestive tract. Whether it's from a supplement or from your food, it doesn't matter. Without vitamin D, you're not absorbing it. So magnesium's needed to activate vitamin D. So that's one way it affects your bone. You won't absorb calcium unless vitamin D is activated. I'll go into that a little bit deeper in the next conversation. But magnesium gets into the bone and literally is like the biochemical glue that holds your bone together. It's as important to bone as calcium. Even though there's a lot less magnesium in your bone, it's as important to your bone as calcium because magnesium holds the crystals in your bone together. If you lack magnesium in the bone, the crystals enlarge and your bone becomes more friable. In other words, kind of stiffened and easier to break. So it's not a good thing. So magnesium is one of those nutritional deficiencies that can affect the health of female athletes. That's a recent finding from researchers in Spain. And here's a second finding. Magnesium levels, if they're low, make vitamin D ineffective. So let's discuss that. First of all, what does vitamin D do? Vitamin D allows you to absorb calcium through your intestines. You normally absorb calcium from the small intestine. And vitamin D lets it be available. It doesn't exactly shove it into bone. Vitamin K does that. But vitamin D is also needed for your immune system to fight viruses and cancer. Vitamin D, besides your bone, is important for your teeth. It's also important for your muscle, and it has functions in the brain. So vitamin D does a lot of things. So let's talk about vitamin D. How do you make it? The cholesterol in your skin is hit by the sun's radiation, the ultraviolet radiation, that changes the cholesterol into kind of pre-vitamin D. 25-hydroxycholecalciferol. That goes into the liver. And the liver releases that, and that's the one that your doctor checks because it's stable in the blood for about 2 weeks. But it's not active yet. It can't do anything for you yet. It then has to enter the kidneys and be activated, and that one's only stable in the blood for about an hour, so doctors don't normally check that one. But that's the one that's good for the immune system, and that's the one that's good for your bones, etc., so on and so forth. You need magnesium to activate the vitamin D, so it does all these things. So it works for your bones, it works for your teeth, it works for your muscles, it works to lower your risk of cancer, it works for the immune system to help fight viruses and protect yourself from viruses. So when the doctor checks your vitamin D level, they might say it's a good level of vitamin D, but you have to understand it's not active yet. And because most Americans lack magnesium in their diet, a little bit over 50%, well, they're not activating vitamin D. So even if they have a good blood level of the vitamin D precursor, 25-hydroxycholecalciferol, they're not converting it into the active form, which is 1,25-dihydroxycholecalciferol. So you need magnesium for all these things. So that came out of the Journal of the American Osteopathic Association. It's from Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. You need magnesium to activate vitamin D. Many Americans are low in magnesium. The last finding, current finding on magnesium, there's thousands of studies on the mineral magnesium. And now, just from the get-go, you need magnesium to activate vitamin D. You need magnesium to keep your bones solid and strong and lower the risk of a fracture. You need magnesium for daytime energy. You need magnesium to sleep at night. You need magnesium, obviously, for your bone, but also to control your blood sugar. You need magnesium for your muscle function, for your nerve function. You need magnesium for eye health and brain health. To release all those neurotransmitters in the brain that make the brain work. You need magnesium to control your blood pressure. It's so important for so many things, and so many Americans lack magnesium. All diabetics lose magnesium in their urine, so they need to really take care of getting in enough magnesium. They really need supplementation. Female athletes obviously need more magnesium than they're probably getting from their diet. But here's a report on different things that lower the risk of colon cancer, colorectal cancer. It's in the journal Gut. It's in the journal Gut. And they found a bunch of things lower your risk of colon and rectal cancer. So it's an important finding. It's an analysis of pooled data from a bunch of human clinical trials. So here's what they said. Folate, so that's one of the things female athletes are lacking, and magnesium, and dairy products may all stave off bowel cancer. So why would a dairy product? Well, you're getting calcium in dairy products. You're getting vitamin D in dairy products. Both of those have some level of protection from bowel cancer. But also if it's a fermented dairy product, like kefir, or a fermented dairy drink, or yogurt, another fermented dairy product, you're getting good bacteria that lower the risk of bowel cancer. So this is a pooled data from a bunch of studies published in the journal Gut recently. They said in the United States alone, 1 in every 20 people is likely to develop bowel cancer at some point during their lifetime. And worldwide, more than 2.2 million new cases are found each year by the year 2030, and 1.1 million deaths per year worldwide from colon and rectal cancer by the year 2030. So they found 80 really good studies. 80 studies. So this is an umbrella analysis of pooled data from 80 studies. So this is an overarching level of research. The results show that aspirin likely lowers the risk of bowel cancer between 14 to 29%. That's low-dose aspirin. High-dose aspirin can have some complications. Like it seems to be able to increase the risk of posterior subcapsular cataracts. It could cause tinnitus, ringing in the ears. It could cause bleeding ulcers in the intestines. But low-dose aspirin is less likely to have all of those negative effects, and it's been shown to help protect you from like a second heart attack, but also it likely lowers the risk of bowel cancer. NSAIDs, used for up to 5 years, a 26 to 43% lower risk of developing colon and rectal cancers. But there's a caveat with that. NSAIDs are also toxic to your hearing. They're not healthy for your eyes. They're not healthy for your heart. They could cause heart failure. They could trigger a heart attack or stroke. They're bad for the kidneys. And some people who are susceptible, they could trigger an asthma attack. They could drill holes in the intestines, most of them, other than Celebrex. So they could cause dangerous bleeding ulcers. That's a medical emergency. So, I mean, it's a little bit risky to take NSAIDs for 5 years. I don't know if I do it, but it does lower your risk of colon cancer between 26 to 43%. Folate, once again, that's the stuff that's ubiquitous in plants. If you could convert it into methyl tetrahydrofolate, you lower your risk of cancers, a whole bunch of cancers. So folate lowered the risk of colon and rectal cancer between 12 to 15%, but they couldn't figure out a threshold for that. Like, will more folate cut the risk even more? They couldn't figure it out from the 80 studies. But magnesium, even just a moderate level of magnesium intake, 255 milligrams a day, a 23% lower risk of developing colon and rectal cancers. So that's pretty good. Fiber, where do you get fiber? Salad, vegetables, fresh fruit, whole grains. Fiber, a 22 to 43% lower risk of bowel cancer. Fruit and vegetables, fresh fruit and vegetables, up to a 52% lower risk of colon and rectal cancers. Soy foods reduced the risk between 8 to 15%. That was modest. They found a modest protective effect in high calcium intake. They did find red meat and processed meat increased the risk of colorectal cancer. And the more you had, the higher the risk. So it was a dose response effect. Okay? In other words, every 100 grams, which is about 3 1/3 ounces of red meat or processed meat like bacon, a steak, they were all grouped together, increase your risk of bowel cancer from 10 to 30%. So that means if you had a pound of red meat every day, like a steak every day, that really increases your risk of colorectal cancer. Alcohol also, 1 to 2 drinks every day increase your risk of colon cancer. So where am I going with this? Once again, magnesium. Lacking magnesium is bad for female athletes. Lacking magnesium doesn't activate vitamin D, which is, by the way, one of the things that protects you from colon and rectal cancer. And lacking magnesium increases your risk of bowel cancers. There's so much to say about the mineral magnesium. It's really a good one. I get a little bit extra supplemental magnesium every day. In the morning, I make a shake. I exercise for about a half an hour each morning, sometimes on my exercise bike, sometimes swimming. And after that, I make a shake of just with water. I'm not putting in any kind of juice or anything. I put in College XHA for my skin, hair, and nails, but mostly for my bones and my joints, my spinal tissue, and my menisci under my knees. I put in Flex HX, a scoop for my ligaments and tendons. I put in a half a scoop of cocoa because it tastes great, but the cocoa is great for your brain and heart and your skin. I put in a scoop of whey protein powder. We have a really high quality whey protein powder isolate. I put in a scoop of that. And then I put in a half a scoop of the bone powder. So I'm getting vitamin D, vitamin K1, vitamin K2, boron, calcium, and magnesium. So even though I eat a great diet, I eat a lot of fish, I eat a lot of vegetables, I eat a lot of seeds and nuts and avocados, I'm getting a lot of sources of magnesium. I make sure by taking that half scoop of bone powder, because I'm an older guy, I'm 67. Our needs are different. So that's one way to get it. Our bone powder, you get magnesium. We have a number of magnesium supplements that are really well absorbed. Let me tell you the difference between certain magnesium supplements. The two best are magnesium citrate and magnesium glycinate. Magnesium glycinate generally is slightly higher potency, about 200 milligrams per tablet, and it's incredibly well absorbed. The magnesium citrate is a little bit weaker, also well absorbed, not quite as good as the magnesium glycinate, but pretty well absorbed. But that one has a stool softening effect. So here's how I pick the magnesium for my clients. If they're constipated, I give them magnesium citrate. If they're not, they get the magnesium glycinate. It's as simple as that. So thank you for tuning into the InVite Health Podcast. You can find all of our episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or visit invitehealth.com/podcast. Please subscribe and please leave us a review. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at InVite Health Today. We'll see you next time on another episode of the InVite Health Podcast, and thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.